Today, when we look up at the North American sky, we see only scattered flocks of small birds gliding in the distance. But just over a century ago, the heavens would grow dark, completely eclipsed by millions of beating wings. This was the spectacle of the passenger pigeon. Once the most numerous bird on Earth, at their peak, their population reached 3 to 5 billion, making up nearly 40% of all birds in North America. And yet, in less than 100 years, they vanished forever. The passenger pigeon was slender and graceful, with iridescent feathers of blue, green, and red, and bright, shining eyes. What made them extraordinary was not just their beauty, but their way of life. They traveled in enormous flocks, hundreds of thousands strong, migrating and nesting together. When they passed overhead, their numbers stretched for miles upon miles, blotting out the sun for hours. Observers described the sound of their wings as distant thunder rolling across the sky. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, passenger pigeons symbolized the boundless wealth of the American wilderness. Feeding on acorns, chestnuts, and berries, they helped spread seeds across vast forests, shaping ecosystems. They were also a vital food source for predators, and for indigenous peoples, who hunted them modestly, taking only what was necessary. But with the arrival of European settlers and the expansion of North American cities, the bird's fate began to change. The growth of the railroad and telegraph in the 19th century transformed pigeon hunting into a massive industry. Teams of professional hunters scoured the land, armed with rifles, nets, and even smoke fires to drive the birds down. Passenger pigeons were slaughtered not just for food sold cheaply as sustenance for workers and farmers, but also for animal feed, fertilizer, and taxidermy. Each year, millions of pigeons were killed during a single hunting season. The passenger pigeon had one critical vulnerability. They only bred successfully in enormous colonies. A flock of millions provided the safety needed for eggs and chicks to survive. But once human hunting reduced their numbers, they could no longer gather in large enough groups to reproduce. Smaller flocks were easy prey for hunters and predators, creating a vicious cycle of collapse. By the late 1800s, the once mighty flocks had disappeared. Only a few scattered groups remained, hiding deep in the forests. Hunters pursued them even more eagerly, knowing their rarity increased their value. By 1890, wild passenger pigeons were essentially gone. A few individuals survived in captivity, but breeding attempts failed. One by one, they died out, leaving only silence behind. On September 1, 1914, in the Cincinnati Zoo, a lone pigeon named Martha drew her final breath. She was the last passenger pigeon on Earth. Her death marked the extinction of a species that had once dominated the skies in numbers beyond imagination. Martha's body was preserved and now rests at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, serving as a solemn reminder of what was lost. The disappearance of the passenger pigeon is not just the story of a bird, it is a cautionary tale about humanity's power to destroy. In less than a century, billions were reduced to none. Today, conservationists call it the greatest conservation tragedy of modern times. It forces us to ask, if a species once considered impossible to wipe out could be destroyed so quickly, what about the countless others that are already endangered? Ironically, the extinction of the passenger pigeon helped spark the modern conservation movement. In the early 20th century, new laws were passed to protect migratory birds, and national parks and sanctuaries were established. The tragedy of the passenger pigeon became a rallying cry for the protection of wildlife worldwide. Even now, in an age of climate change and habitat loss, the story of this bird echoes as a warning. No species is safe if we fail to protect it. Ironically, the extinction of the passenger pigeon helped spark the modern conservation movement. In the early 20th century, new laws were passed to protect migratory birds, and national parks and sanctuaries were established. The tragedy of the passenger pigeon became a rallying cry for the protection of wildlife worldwide. Even now, in an age of climate change and habitat loss, the story of this bird echoes as a warning. No species is safe if we fail to protect it.